everybody, and welcome to IELTS Learning Tips channel and another video in our IELTS series. My name's Bernie Wall. I'm an English language teacher and an IELTS trainer, and I specialise in working with students who require Band 7 and 8, and also with students who've taken the exam a few times and perhaps haven't yet reached it, well, definitely haven't yet reached their score and need some assistance getting there. So in the last video, I talked about the importance of not just doing tests endlessly, and also the importance of building your English language skills, because if you have good skills, then the IELTS should not be a problem for you, and getting your high band scores should be inevitable if your overall language, and that includes not just your reading and listening ability, but also your speaking and writing, your knowledge of grammar, your flexibility and extent of vocabulary. All of these play a part in improving your skills and getting a high score in the IELTS. So what I want to look at today is ways in which you can address your English language skills generally so that they will boost your scores in all parts of the IELTS exam. So without further ado, let me share with you the thing I've prepared. Let me just find the share button. Thank you. And we'll look at how you can improve your English language skills alongside your IELTS, specific IELTS practice. So remember, it's all about language. At the end of the day, it is all about language. That's what's being tested. And it's applied language, so language applied to certain tasks, because the IELTS is very specific. The academic is for study at university. So it's really testing that you have the ability in English to do a high-level course at university. It's also used, I know, for registration in your profession. I'm not sure it's 100% appropriate for that, to be honest, but it is what the GMC and the other boards have chosen, so we have no choice in that. The general training is about your general English ability for living and working in an English-speaking country, so that's why it's slightly different. But both of them are testing that you can manage with your English level to live and work and study in an English language speaking country. Okay, so this was something that a student once asked me a few years ago now. How can I improve my IELTS score? So we talked about it, and I recommended to him that the very best way was to work on his English language skills, because at the time he asked me this question, there were lots of problems with his English, with his pronunciation, with his fluency, with his writing, with his understanding. So this was my suggestion. And I suggested that he addressed all of these skills as well as the grammar and vocabulary. And his reply was, I know that this would really help me, but I don't have time to do this as I'm too busy with my IELTS. Okay, that was a very funny answer, and it did make me laugh, but at the same time, it was pretty tragic, because this student had not understood that IELTS was about English, and the best way to improve IELTS was to be better at English language. And I don't know what happened to him. He went away with his IELTS books and wasn't interested in doing anything but just go through the test. So I don't really know. But I would imagine from my experience, and I've been an IELTS teacher and trainer and examiner for 25 years plus. So in my experience, I would imagine that if he did get the score he wanted, it would have been a very long time before that happened. Okay, so IELTS is English. It's a test of your ability to apply your English to certain tasks. And so the better your ability, the easier the test. It stands to reason. I could take the test and do very well, even without preparation. Now, I know people say to me, native speakers even fail. Yeah, sometimes they do, but that's usually because they don't prepare. They don't look at the test, they just rock up and expect to be able to do it. But with a little bit of preparation, it's unlikely that a native speaker, and a native speaker who's got a good level of reading and writing, because not all native speakers are good at the academic side. So that's also a factor. But they should, if they do a bit of preparation, be able to get a good score on the test without too much difficulty. So the better your ability, the higher the score, obviously. And this is the reality. So getting a good score is dependent upon your English language. So any weak areas in your English language are going to pull you down in the exam. So they need to be addressed. So I'm flagging up writing and speaking because these are the ones where students often struggle. I see again and again and again on Facebook, on LinkedIn, in the comments in YouTube here, that students get 7.5, 8, sometimes even 9 in listening and reading, and then they get 6, 6.5 in writing and speaking. There are two main reasons for that. They don't practice them enough. And if you're one of those people that focuses more on reading and listening and less on writing and speaking, you're making a big mistake. Writing and speaking are the hub of language. They are the main things in language, is using the language. Reading and listening are passive. They are not active. And it's in the active skills where you need to focus most. And a lot of students leave them to the end. I hear again and again, at the moment, I'm working on my listening, then I'm going to work on my reading, then my writing, and then my speaking. It's the wrong way round. Writing and speaking take much longer. If you, especially speaking, if you don't have the opportunity to speak, they will take much longer to get to the high bands. Writing almost always takes longer. So you need to start those first. You need to be doing those right from the beginning of your preparation. And students are often not active enough in these productive skills. They don't speak enough. They don't practice their speaking enough. They don't write enough and get feedback. So without these things, you're not going to get a high score. You have to focus on them. Focusing on listening and reading produces good results. You can see that. You read it every day. I read it every day. So the focus is not on writing and speaking. Therefore, the results won't come out in the same way. And another problem is that there's too much focus and too much worry about the question and the cue cards. Now, you have to interpret the question and you have to give a good answer to the question, but you have to do this in really good English. To get a band 7 or a band 8, your English has to be almost flawless. For band 8, almost flawless. That of a reasonable native speaker university student. That's what you're aiming at. The same with the cue card. You have to be able to deliver that little talk in the same way that somebody would deliver a presentation at university. So don't worry about what is on the cue card or what the question is. Worry about how you're going to interpret it and what you're going to say and what you're going to write. Okay. YouTube won't help you very much. It's just information. Unless you write the tasks and get feedback on your writing, you will just keep going round in circles. Unless you speak to people, unless you practice the speaking, you will not do very well in the exam. You have to think about the content of what you want to say and, more importantly, how you want to say it. So what vocabulary and grammar are you going to use? What kind of sentence structures do you want to put into your writing and your speaking? How is your pronunciation? Can you explain it well? And do you have got good pronunciation that's clear so the examiner's not going to struggle to understand? It's the how rather than the what. Okay, I've been an examiner, so I've looked at writing and I've delivered speaking exams. And I can tell you, and this is borne out by the students that I've worked with over the 25 plus years I've been doing this, that most of the problems generally come up in spelling and grammar. Also in lack of understanding, perhaps of the question, perhaps of the premise of the question, perhaps of the questions in the speaking, and also poor planning. And poor planning is really a problem for many students in their writing, particularly task 2, and in the speaking part 2. It's not planned properly, so therefore it's not delivered well. There's also poor vocabulary, a lot of repetition, using common simple words all the time, poor sentence structure, repetition of the same kind of sentence structure, using subject, verb, object, which is a basic sentence type, but there are many different ways of doing sentence structures which are more interesting, more academic, and deliver more information in a more economical way. Pronunciation problems and lack of fluency in the speaking are also issues. It's about language ability, improving weaknesses, getting more active practice in both of these parts, understanding your mistakes, and you can only understand those if you get feedback. Now, that feedback is better from a teacher, but it could be from somebody who understands these things, but it must be useful feedback. It must be feedback that says, this is why this is wrong, and this is how you should be doing it. Or this is why you're not getting 7 here, because you need to improve your vocabulary, or you need to have a wider range of sentence structures, or you need more fluency, or you need more spontaneity in the speaking. So that feedback needs to be useful, and it also needs to show you how to fix it. Okay, and then you try again and you make it better and you keep improving, which is why if you send me a piece of writing and I check it and then you put it in your folder and then you do nothing more, nothing's going to change. It's a process. Both speaking and writing and improving these skills are a process, and you have to keep following through on the process, which is why I don't do one-off corrections. I prefer to work with students over 4 weeks usually, and day by day we build their writing skill. So I ask them to send me one task each day. I check it, I give feedback. That feedback's used for the next day, and through that process you get to your band 7 or your 7.5 or your 8. Okay, you need good language resources. You need a good grammar resource. That might be a book, that might be online. The first thing you need to is to understand how the grammar works. Then you need to practice it. Then you need to correct it. Then you need to repeat it and do it again. This is how you improve language. Repetition, repetition, repetition. You need to then take it up a level and learn some new and more sophisticated structures. Then you understand them, you do them, you correct them, you repeat them. This is how it works. Okay, it's constant, it's pushing and pushing and pushing. And my students, I won't say I'm never satisfied. I will say to them, and if you want to be one of my students and go through this process, I'd be delighted. But I say to them, yes, but now try do this, now try do that. Don't repeat that. And every time we're pushing and pushing and pushing until there's a point at which we both know, right, this is it. You should now get this score in your IELTS exam. But even in my own writing, there's always room for improvement. In speaking and writing, it's never 100%. There's always room for improvement. You need to have a good dictionary. And I would look at one of the solid dictionaries. I'm from the UK, so I would say Oxford, Cambridge, Macmillan, Pearson. If you're from the US, there are standards too. But the IELTS exam is an Australian British test. So use one of those dictionaries. Check words you don't know. Understand how to use them. They will give you examples. This is collocation. Not all words can be used in all situations. Learn synonyms, because in the reading you get synonyms. In your writing you will need synonyms. Understand whether they are common, whether they are old-fashioned and you shouldn't be using them at all, or whether they're only used in certain contexts, like literature, for example. Sometimes students use words that would only be used in poetry, and so they don't work correctly in task 2 or in task 1 or in speaking, unless you're talking about something literary. So you need to understand how to use them and whether in fact you should even be using them. Are they going to make you sound silly if they're words that were used in the Victorian period, you know, over 100 years ago? This is important. To really improve, you need to reach for your grammar book and dictionary, not just your IELTS test book. Okay, so that's what I wanted to say there. And I do not believe, but know, I know it because of my experience, that if you focus on these things, in addition to doing your IELTS practice, you will get a high score. It's inevitable. So if you want to talk to me about your IELTS, or if you're interested in working with me on your IELTS, as I said before, I would be delighted. I'm quite a taskmaster, but I think that pays off, because unless it's right, it's not going to get the score. Okay, thank you for watching this, and I hope it's been useful, and I will see you on the next video. Bye, everybody.